of the University of Maine at Augusta, and I'm recording this video for you because you're taking my Introduction to Sociology class. And in that class, I've asked you to profile different places of racial diversity. So this is information that you can actually look up. It contains information about racial diversity that codes for those racial categories that American society has deemed important through the political process that is required to get a racial category added to the U.S. Census Bureau's list of identifiers. It is then reflected in um, uh, the American Community Surveys questionnaire that goes out and collects information about people's self-identified racial category. So to get started with this, we're going to go to data.census.gov. And there is so much information about these racial categories that simply searching here is not going to give you a simple table to look at. So I'm asking you to look for a particular table this time. And let's enter it together. The table is B02001. And you will see this option pop up that says race, and you can just select that. It's going to take you to a page of results that are for the United States overall. We can see that here in the heading United States. It's also available for the last year for which data has been completed and processed, which is 2019. Since I'm going to be asking you to talk about places that are relatively small, um, I would like you to work not with the 1 year estimates, but with 5 year estimates. That will ensure that you can get information down to the level of relatively small towns. This brings together 5 years worth of survey data and describes racial makeup of a town in uh, and across those 5 years. Because it brings more survey respondents together, we can talk about smaller places. So, in your work for this class, you already have identified your main town of interest, and I would like you to find that town by then clicking here on Geos, is short for geography levels, and scrolling down until you find not place, but county subdivision. Click on that. You're going to be looking at a town within Maine. And so then you're going to need to know the county that your town is in. This time, let's take a look at, we're going to look at two towns. Let's first look within Aroostook County. And let's say we're interested in, let's see, I was thinking of Holton. So let's take a look at Holton. Or what the heck, how about Limestone? That's really quite a bit up there within the county. So, Aroostook County, Maine, Limestone Town, we can hit close. Now, what you've got here is a number of numbers, they're counts. They're counts of particular people. So, uh, one that we are going to work with over and over again is going to be the total. Because while these counts will work for a town like Limestone that has a total population of 2009, in order to make comparisons, you're going to need to generate percentages. And here's how to do it. Now, what um, uh, I'm going to ask you to do is to copy this information over into a spreadsheet. I have Microsoft Excel, which everyone here at this university has access to for free. If you don't know how to get it for free, get in touch with me and I'll show you how. But we're going to start with limestone here. Okay, and we're going to start with counts. And I've already typed in all the categories that are covered in that table, right? Each one of these. And then I'm going to enter total because I want to know what the total is for each place. Okay, so I know that white alone is 1,862. Black or African American alone, which means that this is just somebody who identifies with one racial category, is 24. American Indian and Alaska Native alone, again, these are the US Census terms, 72. Asian alone, 20. Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander alone, 0. Or some other race alone, 0. So then there's two other races, including some other race, 0. And then there's two races excluding some other race, and 3 or more races, and that's 31. So that's a multiracial category. People either indicating 2 of the above races or 3 or more, and that's 31 of those. And then we can look and we can try to add those up by taking this set of cells here and typing in the command equals sum, which is the way you add in Microsoft Excel, B2 to B9 with a colon between B2 and B9. Notice it highlights those cells so you know what you're adding. It'll get you to 2009, which is indeed the total that is present on the US Census website for the American Community Survey. Again, notice you always get that total information here that you're on table B02001. The survey program at the top says American Community Survey, and you can verify that you are looking at ACS 5-year estimates, the last 5 years all put together. You can see why for a small town like Limestone, getting 5 years worth of survey respondents together is really important because it's a small place. So the margin of error is relatively small too, and you want to get as much information as you can. So there's limestone, right? And let's compare that to another stone name, except this time we'll call it Rockland. Okay, so let's select Geo again, and let's clear geographies because we don't want limestone there anymore. And then let's click Geos again. And this time we're not going to search within Aroostook County, Maine. We're going to look within Knox County, Maine, and because that's where Rockland is. And then we will just keep scrolling until we find Rockland. Now, we've got that information down there. It's appearing at the bottom of that pop-up window under selected geographies, so we can close. And now we have new information here. So that information for us is 6,919 individuals in Rockland that are white alone, 0 that are Black or African American alone, 70 that are American Indian or Alaska Native alone. Again, these are census titles. And if they seem a little unusual to you in terms of how do they describe color or do they describe something else, that's worth paying attention to. And then Native American, Hawaiian or Pacific Islander alone, and some other race alone, 0. How about 2 races including some other race? Well, that would be 6 people. And then there are 104 individuals who either have 2 races excluding some other race or 3 or more races indicated. That's 104. And the total of that, sum of C2 to C9, is 7,178. Okay, great. And that is also the total that is presented here. Good. So now that we have this information, how can we compare these two places? We can't yet, really. We can sort of get a general guess, but percentages are what we're going to want to convert these to. For your work, I'm also going to ask you to look at the state of Maine in those 5-year summaries. So we'll clear geographies. And then let's take a look at a particular state. So I selected state, and then let's take a look here at the state of Maine. And then I see that's the only geography I've listed. Good, so I'm going to hit close. And I have that uh, total and this series of um, particular counts for particular racial categories below. So I can go and I can type in 1,259,522 who identify as white alone, 18,468 identifying as either Black or African American, all alone by itself. American Indian or Alaska Native alone is 8,660. Asian alone, 15,109. Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander alone, 396. Some other race that is not captured here, 3,541. And then multiracial categories, 2 races, including some other race, 1,467. And what about 2 races excluding some other race, but possibly including up to 3 or more, 28,329. And now let's sum that up again. And I'm going to sum it here, and then I'm going to check it against the sum in the table to make sure that I've entered all the data correctly. D2 to D9. 1,335,492. 1,335,492. Right up here at the top. Great. So now that I've got all this information, I'm going to want to find percentages. And what I can do is I can take these labels and I can paste them below. I can take these headers and I can paste them right above. And then how do I fill this up? Well, in order to get a percentage, here's what I would need to do. I would need to take whatever value, say for if we want to do one for white alone, I want to take the value of this cell, the count, and that would be cell B2. And then I can divide that by the total, divided by 2009. But now I want to do a little bit more than that, because that's going to give me what's called a proportion, which is a number between 0 and 1, to get a percentage, which is the share out of 100, every 100 people in limestone who are white. I'd want to multiply that by 100. So I'll take all that, which is in parentheses now, B2 divided by 2009, and I'll want to multiply that by 100. And that is a percentage. So now we can say 92.68%, rounding just a little bit, of the population of limestone identifies as white alone. So now what's really cool about Microsoft Excel is that once I've done this, I could type in those formulas over and over again down this line, or I could just drag that formula down. And it will calculate the same, but it will notice when it goes down one cell, it assumes you want to refer to this next cell down here. So it refers to B3 now, Black or African American alone. That's 1.194624%. So let's do the same for Rockland. So to understand the percent that are white alone identifying in Rockland, we would take cell C2, notice how it's highlighted, and we would divide that now not by, I'm going to put that in parentheses right away, not by 2009, but by the population of Rockland, 7,178. And then we'll multiply that by 100 to get a percentage. So in Rockland, 96.4% identify as white. So limestone is marginally less white than Rockland is. We can now see that little green box. If I click on that and drag down, I can get it to run similar calculations for the rest of limestone. So why is that? Well, there's a big difference here in those who identify as Black or African American in limestone versus Rockland, and those who identify as American Indian or Alaska Native. There's a greater percentage in limestone than there is in Rockland. So that is pretty much the source of the 4 percentage point difference. So now I can make a comparison between those percentages because it's a rate per 100 people that allows you to look at two towns that have different size populations. I want to talk about different size populations. My goodness, what about the population of Maine? Well, we could do the same thing. And that would be to take a look at D2 here, which is the white alone population. And I'll put that in parentheses. D2 divided by now, what is the total for the state of Maine? 1,335,492. And then I'll multiply that again by 100. So the state of Maine lies somewhere in between Rockland and limestone. It is a very white state, 94.3% white. And dragging that little bottom green box down, I can quickly generate similar calculations. Or, I could type in now here, I could type in equals D3, excuse me, for the Black or African American population of Maine, which is 18,468 people, divided by 1,335,492 times 10. I could do it 100 times 100. I could do that as well, and I would get the same process leading to the percentage here. Now, it turns out that the percentage of Mainers who are Black or African American alone is higher for the state of Maine than it is for either limestone or Rockland. However, if we're looking at the percentage of Maine that is American Indian or Alaska Native alone, that is only 0.65% if we round up. And both Rockland and especially limestone are higher. These two places in different parts of the state. We're almost done here. Finally, for the United States overall, I'm going to double click that so that the cell automatically gets wider. How do we get that information from the census? Well, pretty easily. We simply clear all geographies, and then let's restore that. Okay, so it's not giving us Maine yet. That's okay. So what we'll do is when it's not refreshing itself for us, we can go back to the tables or to search, and we can always start over again. B02001. Every once in a while, the census data website doesn't refresh itself. That's fine. Start again. Here we are in 2019. Now, these are 1-year estimates. To be parallel across all processes, I want you to use 5-year estimates for everyone. And we note that this is an estimate using the 5-year estimates for the United States. Now we've got that information. All we have to do is enter that. Now, 324,697,795 people. It's a lot more than the state of Maine. Black or African American. Oh, now that's the total. got to be careful, right? It's always possible to make mistakes. So always look over to the left and make sure you know what you're writing down. White alone is 235,377,662 people. Whew. Okay. How about Black or African American alone? 41,234,642. American Indian and Alaska Native alone, 2,750,143. Nearly 3 million people who are American Indian or Alaska Natives. So how about Asian alone? 17,924,209. Native American or other Pacific Islander alone, 599,868. Some other race alone, 16,047,369. That's a huge number of people that are not captured in this census description of what races should be, right? Which is, again, a process of racial formation. Look at the rest of the lecture and how we talk about Omi and Winant's ideas of racialization and racial formation. That's what produces these categories. Then 2 races, including some other race, 1,625,998, and 2 races excluding some other race, and 3 or more races, 9,137,904. So that's a lot of multiracial people in the United States. And if we take a look at the total there, that does sum up to 324,697,795 people. So let's calculate the percentages here. Fortunately, just because there are larger numbers here doesn't mean that calculating the percentage is any more difficult for a spreadsheet. It is on a calculator. So what we really want to do is we just want to say, hey, take a look at E2. This is for whites alone. And we are going to want to divide that by the total, which is 324,697,795. And that tells us that in the United States overall, white people make up 72.5% of the population, not even 3 out of 4. Very different than Maine or Rockland or Limestone. Do we want to multiply that by 100? Yes, we do. Okay. So now that we've multiplied that by 100, we can go in again and we could say, let's take E3 and divide it by 324,697,795 people. Whew. Multiply that by 100, and you get 12.7% or 12.70% rounding up of the US population being Black or African American alone. These are very different figures than for the state of Maine, which in turn are different than for these small towns. And what I want you to do then, and this is your job, after you've followed this technique and generated this information, I want you to save it, I want you to present it, and I also want you to talk in a couple of paragraphs really cogently about which places are different from one another, which places are similar to one another, and why. You might want to actually look up a little additional information about these different places, especially the small towns in the States, to figure out why is the racial composition of one place not the same as the racial composition of another. That thought work is really up to you once you collect this data on your central town, another town in Maine, to compare it to the state of Maine and the United States overall. Good luck. And if you have any questions or are struggling through this, well, don't wait till the last minute if you want to have the chance of getting in touch with me. But do get in touch with me through the contact information on the syllabus, and I would love to puzzle through some of this information with you. Great.